Welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn webinar today. I'm Lucy. I'm Lucy Smith, and you'll find out a little bit more about me in a few moments. We are here for the next 30 minutes for sure. And then I have scheduled in 15 minutes for questions and chat if we need it. Right now, we're recording and you should have cameras off. You don't need to have your cameras on. I can't see anybody. Can't see anybody. I can literally just see my screen. You will get a recording of this also. This is kind of relaxed. There will be some interaction, okay? I am going to ask in a moment for a poll, so we'll do that one. And I think I'm just going to crack on now and keep talking, okay? So welcome to Supporting Parents in Work. Hopefully in this session, we will understand more about the hidden pressures facing parents of neurodivergent children in the workplace. I was one of those parents. In fact, I still am one of those parents. Press the button. I still am one of those parents. Here's me looking happy, smiling, leaning against a wall in Paynton, actually. I often start my sessions, in fact, I almost always start my sessions saying change begins with passionate people who have a vision. And everybody who's here today, I think you have a vision. I think you want to find out more about this because this has probably been one of our most popular lunch and learns that we've ever done. Now, I want to say a little bit about me and the reason why I do this stuff. I'm here from Inclusive Change. This is a company I founded in 2020. But one of the things I want to say is I left jobs that I loved. I have had a fantastic career and I've done some incredible stuff and had some brilliant jobs. But I left jobs that I loved. Firstly, in 2017, I left the National Crime Agency where I had worked for 16 years and I flipping loved that job. And then I moved into higher education and became a change manager at the University of Bristol. And I flipping loved that job too. But I left those jobs because, not because I couldn't do them, not because I was useless at them, not because I disliked them, but I left them because I could no longer balance my work and supporting my family. You see, I'm a parent of two autistic teenagers. They're now nearly 20 and 18 years old. And as a family, we spent many of their teenage years. So they found out they were autistic at the age of 11. And we had to support them. And that's myself and my husband. And I have got permission to talk about his story as well. But I'll talk about that a bit later when it pops up. So I left jobs that I loved and I set up Inclusive Change in 2020 because I didn't want people to go through the same things that I have and that my children have. And really, things are changing, things can change, but they've not changed enough yet. And I'm still seeing it happen with parents all of the time. In fact, our team, we have parents on our team who are struggling right now, really struggling, because they're parents of neurodivergent young children and they're just finding out what's going on, what this thing called neurodiversity is all about and why it's impacting them. So before I go too much further, I want to talk a little bit about why we need to talk about this. And this is quite sobering, all right? I am going to say this isn't one of those sessions where I'm going to be, hey, we can do this and we can do that. This is sobering, okay? We're seeing burnout. We're seeing burnout in our teams. We're seeing burnout in our colleagues and in our families. It is there every single day. And there will be many reasons for that burnout, but one of them could be that families are struggling. Families and parents are struggling with things like school attendance. We're struggling with a whole range of different things. And we're under pressure and we're feeling that pressure as families. The world has changed quite considerably. And where it was the case that maybe 15, 20 years ago, you might have had one parent working and one parent at home as a homemaker. Nowadays, that isn't quite the case. And we're finding that parents are really struggling in the workplace. We also want to talk about managers. who are under pressure to respond to this, managers who want to do the right things, but sometimes might be struggling because they don't know what the right thing is. They don't know how to say the right thing. And then my last point on there, retention. We're going to find that we're not able to retain good staff. I left great jobs that I loved, left them because I couldn't stay in employment because I needed to look after my family. So there's a whole range of reasons why we need to talk about this right now. I'd love to know if you wanted to put anything in the chat about why you're on the call. And we've got a little poll for you today, actually, so that I know a little bit about everybody that's on the call. Now, bear with me because I'm going to bring this poll up. Polls and quizzes, click the button, and I'm going to relaunch my poll. So we've got a poll coming up, which is asking you, why are you here today? Why are you here today? There are two other questions, but you don't need to answer them right now. But why are you here today? Are you a manager and a team leader? Are you a parent carer? Are you a HR or people team manager? Are you neurodivergent yourself? Are you simply here to learn more? Or if you prefer not to say, that's totally okay too. The reason I ask this today is because that's really, really helpful in understanding how we talk about this in this session. And I know that there's going to be a mix of you. So I'm going to let that poll run for a little bit longer. And as you can tell, you don't need to say anything. You don't need to shout out. You don't need to put it in the chat. So we don't need to know who you are. And just before I go too much further, I want to say in this session, ask, explore. There is no judgment, okay? This is hopefully a session. It is being recorded, so it's a lot of me talking at the moment. But this is hopefully a session where you will be able to ask questions, where we can explore some of those challenges in what's going on. On a few practical things, you can move, fidget, doodle, do anything that helps you, all right? Nobody's watching. I haven't got any vision on cameras, so please just do what you need to do, okay? Oh, thanks, Darren. I will pick that up. Thank you very much. It's the first time we've run this one, so yeah, really, really helpful. I'm going to close that one for now. There is no pressure to speak or share personal experiences at all, but if you want to pop anything in the chat, if you want to answer polls, please do, okay? Absolutely. Yeah, so there is that mix of both. Thank you. And sometimes we can't choose. I'm going to say good point and well brought up about intersectionality, because we're not only one thing, we are actually many things. So thank you so much for bringing that one up. But let's start this conversation. Okay, in this session, you are going to see, and I know I'm not going to be able to keep watching the chat for everything, so bear with me, okay? So in this session, we are going to talk about what I call the hidden load. The things that you may not be seeing as a manager, but the things as a parent, we most certainly are experiencing. We'll talk about the things that you might notice, about how that pressure might be showing up in work. And we'll also talk about some practical tips that we would say you can go away with. All that in the next 20 minutes with a 15-minute Q&A. We might go over by a few minutes, just saying, all right? And we might go over just because I might try and keep up with the chat. Right, before we go too far, I'd like to start a session with just a bit of clarification and a baseline about what I am talking about. Because quite often we can make assumptions that we know what this thing called neurodiversity is. And particularly when I'm talking to managers, when I'm talking to organizations who are early on in their understanding of neurodiversity, I just want that baseline. So a couple of sentences on there. Neurodiversity describes the infinite variety of human neurocognition. I sound like a right old academic there, I'd say. But simply put, basically, all our brains work differently. But there will be a lot of people who have a brain that works quite differently. If we were to think of a bell curve and we were to think about inside that bell curve is what I would say the term neurotypical. So people who experience the world in a fairly typical way. We all have different experiences, absolutely. But actually, outside of that bell curve, we're going to find people who experience the world quite differently. And if we're thinking about our children, children who experience the world quite differently, things like people who might have differences like dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, Tourette's, autism, dyscalculia. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about all of those because if I did, I'd be here for quite a long time. There's still a lot of people waiting to be admitted. So Emily's with me on the chat and to help me admit people today. So thank you. We also have on here a couple of different ones that might not always get picked up under the umbrella, but generally I like to think of them under that neurodiversity umbrella is acquired neurodiversity. So usually that would be something that we would think about in terms of you've had a brain injury or there's been an operation that it's meant things operate differently in your brain now. You could also put menopause under there as well. But most of our children, we're not going to be talking about the menopause. However, if you are supporting a parent of young children who are neurodivergent, it could be highly likely we are also going to be supporting a mother or a female. So somebody who would have female reproductive organs that will also be going through menopause. Just saying that intersectionality absolutely comes up again. And we've also got mental health, where we might have things like depression, anxiety, stress that may fall under that umbrella, particularly if it changes the way that we process the world. Now, I'm not here to go into detail about what is neurodiversity, but I just wanted that baseline there for us there. It's a question there about pans and pandas. I'm not going to go into lots of detail about that, but I would say yes, because you are coping with and experiencing the world in a very different way. But I'm not here to do all the medical stuff today, okay? What I am here is to talk about what's going on. What's happening behind the scenes if we are a parent of neurodivergent children and still trying to keep it together at work. So some of the things that we've got on here, and you are more than welcome to add more on there, okay? You can more than welcome to put stuff in the chat because this will help me create that evidence base as well. But we've got things on there like school meetings, having to go to school meetings regularly. Oh my goodness, I remember those meetings, the timings. It was never at a time that was useful for work. I was always having to ask for time off. We've got waiting lists. At the moment, 749,000 people, well, as of March 2026, 749,000 people were on a list, adults, I will say, were on a list for an ADHD assessment as a long waiting list. Being able to navigate and work through that stress, work through the gatekeeping of trying to get a diagnosis or waiting lists for support and help. Crisis on a Sunday evening. Yes, indeed. Oh, I've been there. I used to call it the witching hour, which was bath time and crisis on the evening before we go to school in the morning on Monday. If we get to school, and actually that's generally not happening. Well, it wasn't for me anyway. Sleep deprivation, okay? The nights when we've had to sleep next to our children, and I know I have done. For years, I was in a place where I needed to be around those children and sleep with them on an evening. And that can mean we are not ready for work in the morning. But we try our best and we turn up and we do what we can do. Emotional regulation. So we're coping with everybody else's emotional regulation, but actually our own can be really low. We can find it very difficult to manage our emotions and be able to hold our tongue, hold our temper, all of those kind of things. The forms and the paperwork. Oh my goodness. I've had to go through 2 educational health and care plans. Those of you on the call that know what an educational health and pet care plan will understand this, will have been through this themselves, okay? But it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of reporting. It's a lot of forms. It's a lot of fighting. Can you see where I'm going with this? Not only all of this, you may also be experiencing your own understanding of what neurodiversity is and thinking, actually, am I also neurodivergent? Quite likely, possibly. I can see loads and loads coming in here. Navigating as a neurodivergent parent, attending tribunals, constantly on edge for that phone call before from school. Oh my gosh, yes. I used to have to turn my watch off. I have an Apple Watch, and I used to have to turn my watch off because I'd be constantly getting pings whilst in meetings with very senior people trying to support them and trying to be a professional. But I was constantly waiting for that phone call of mum, come and pick me up, or my mum, who was my additional carer at the time, helping asking me to go and pick up my children because they were just in crisis at those times. Yes, managing sibling relationships. So you can see there's a heck of a lot. And a lot of parents are coping with a level of pressure that we aren't seeing and we haven't seen before. As I said earlier, what we are seeing in terms of our environment and what's going on is also a sign of the times, a sign of us all having to work because of the cost of living, because actually I deserve to work. We all deserve to have a job. We all deserve to give our talents to our workplaces. Sorry, because I'm going off on a rant here, all right? But it's hard. And as a manager, you may also be coping with your own world going on there, your own children being neurodivergent, you being neurodivergent yourself. I am not going to solve all of this in the next few minutes on this call. But what I do want you to know is that we are here. We are listening and we are ready to talk to as many people as possible about this to help as much as we can. So what you might be seeing versus what might be happening. You might see as a manager in work, you might see somebody who is tired, who is distracted, who is late, who is withdrawn and overwhelmed. If you were just seeing that and you couldn't see the iceberg below, so remember that if many of you done training around the iceberg, all right, systems thinking or thinking about trauma, actually you've got your tip of the iceberg and what you're seeing are the events or the behaviors at the top. You're seeing somebody tired, distracted, late, withdrawn and overwhelmed. But actually what's going on behind the scenes are that we've got sleep deprivation. We're waiting for a school call or a crisis to happen. It's imminent, all right? That morning we have woken up, we have managed to get our kids to school or not, or we've left them at home, or we are having to call in to work from home because actually we need to be around to support that child. We've got pressures with appointments and things that we need to juggle and go to. And I think the one I was going to mention about my husband, and I have literally 30 seconds to tell you this one. So my husband used to work in construction. He now no longer works full time. He no longer has a full-time job because he helps support our family. But he used to work in construction, a very good job. He was a design manager in construction. And our daughter was diagnosed as autistic at the age of 11. And at that time, he was working for a major house builder. Okay. And he went to them and he asked them, can I have some time off, please? Because my daughter has got time. She's got appointments to go to the child and adolescent mental health service because we really needed that at that time. And he asked for every Thursday, could he have a few hours off so that he can come to the session with CAMS, with the therapists. And he was met with eye rolls. He was met with, and reluctantly, begrudgingly, they gave him every other Thursday off. And we had to try and fit it around. We had to try and work it out. And I was working at the same time as him. I was fortunate I had an employer that actually gave me the time off and said, yeah, no problem, whatever you need. So that fear of judgment happened for him. The next thing that happened for him, there were redundancies. And he knew, I'm going to be top of the list because I'm not a team player. I'm not able to be there all the time. I'm not able to be there because I'm supporting my family. So you can see what goes on for parents right here. And then we're also seeing things like family burnout at the time. I did tell you, I did warn you that this is not an easygoing session, okay? But again, I remind you, we're here. The fact that there are over 110 people signed up for this webinar and 56 of you have joined live tells me and should tell all of you that we are not in this alone and that you can be supported. And as managers, you want to support people. Just take that as a positive today, because I know how heavy this stuff is. So why does this matter? Okay, well, it's not about lowering standards. It's not about saying, oh, well, we all have to put up with this. But what you're going to get when somebody isn't supported is burnout. You're going to see higher absence. You're going to see people phoning in sick. You're going to see reduced trust, and people are going to leave. I told you right at the beginning, I left jobs I loved. And still today, there is one job in particular I would go back to in a heartbeat if you asked me to. But if people are supported, you're going to see greater retention, greater loyalty, psychological safety, and better performance. Granted, you are likely to see dips. And when somebody's resilience is down, you are going to see struggles. But it's about keeping good people and great people. And we can do that. We can't afford to lose people. There is a crisis looming around recruitment and retention. And we can't afford to lose good people. Unsupported, oh yeah, I'm seeing some of them here. Unsupported or organizations performance manage people out. Sometimes that absolutely does happen. And the story about my husband, absolutely. He was good at his job. He's really good at his job. Just saying. So I've got some tips coming up. So this is a really short session, okay? And I've got 3 tips coming up. So the first one, if you're a manager and you want to support your teams, ask, don't assume. It's always one I start with. So instead of assuming that they're not engaged, assuming that they're not coping, why don't we start talking in a different way and say, you seem to be under pressure lately. Shall we have a chat? Let's go for a coffee. I remember those times. I remember my manager was doing that for me, and I can feel the emotion of that right now. I can actually take myself back to sitting in a cafe in Park Street, Woods Cafe, by the way. Very, very good prawn and crab sandwiches, just saying. I can see myself sitting in that cafe with my manager talking about what was going on and knowing that I had to make choices. But she would ask, is there anything that we could do differently to support you? What can we do? Now, that is a question that may well bring a lot of emotion. And also, I don't know, because I'm struggling. I'm trying to cope to pull it all together. But is there anything that we can do differently to support you? If you are willing and curious enough to ask that question, I think we can take the next steps forward. Number 2, my second strategy to help, flexibility. So when my husband asked, could I have Thursday mornings to go to meetings? They could have said yes. They did it begrudgingly, and it was only when it kind of worked out. But what can you do to give practical support around appointments at school, medical appointments, all of those kind of things? What can be done? Because I can also tell you that many parents will absolutely give you their loyalty back in spades because you've given them that flexibility. And I would be working until 8, 10 o'clock at night. That isn't right and that isn't okay, but I knew I wanted that flexibility, so I gave that flexibility back from me. I still do it now, but I run my own business, so that's my choice to do that kind of things. And I don't ask it of my employees, but it's there. If there is flexibility, you will get it back in spades from that employee. However, not everybody is going to be able or in a place that they can give you that flexibility, and they actually might need to talk about reduced hours. They might need to talk about the support that can be put in place. Communication, giving predictable updates and written follow-up. So what's happening? How can I support you? What can we do? Being able to communicate with each other and being open with each other, it can be really very, very helpful. Not that we think we're going to be caught out, not that we think that we're going to be performance managed out because we've told and been honest to people and our managers. So being open, honest, and being predictable about things that are going to happen. Giving it an advance notice where you need last minute pressure or last minute work to be done. Given as much notice as possible. So where there's less last minute pressure wherever possible. And having a plan for urgent interruptions. Having a plan for those school calls. Having a plan from your young person. Having a plan of what I'm going to do. I, for instance, will have, right, okay, well, my husband's available or I'm available. And so one of us can do this stuff. Thank you. No problem, Darren. You can watch the recording later. People will often stay with you because you're a great manager, not because of the policies, not because of the procedures, but because you're a good manager. And they stay with you for that. And they remember you for that. And that retention will save you money in the long run. That retention will save a lot of stress in the long run. So my last point on here is don't wait for crisis point. Don't wait for when everything is falling apart. Don't wait for when that person needs to have 6 weeks off sick because they can't go on anymore. I remember a colleague of mine very, very kindly pointing out to me, Luce, every time you come back into work after there's been something happening, you're not bouncing back. So every time you're going down, you're only coming up a little bit. You're not coming up fully. And so you come back with less resilience because you're not taking time off. You're not allowing yourself to recover. You're not giving yourself the space. And in the end, I ended up with 8 weeks off work and using our employee assistance program because I needed to have that time out because I burnt out completely. But what could we do to help make sure we don't get to that point? And ultimately, we're not in control of other people's lives. We can't save everybody. We can't do everything for everyone, but we could do some things like regular check-ins. We could have clear expectations about what we need to be done in the workplace and how much time off you are expecting, what you are expecting for them to do. To have safe conversations that we don't think are going to lead us to be performance managed out. To have flexibility in place. And always review. Don't assume that everything's working okay. Don't assume that just because you put it in place, you don't go back and review. Now, some of these things would be helpful to think about in terms of reasonable adjustments. Now, we offer line manager training around reasonable adjustments in the workplace, and maybe that's something that you might want to consider and might want to find out more about. Because many parents are experiencing a lot of stress. They might be masking what's happening because they don't feel like they can tell you. That stigma, that judgment, that fear, and also not being able to explain what's going on. Because sometimes we're dealing with it ourselves, a later diagnosis or a recent diagnosis, an understanding of all of our values and everything we thought that was happening in our lives completely thrown out of the window. We feel guilty. We feel there's judgment. To be talking about things like mental health challenges, and I'm trying not today to put trigger warnings or trigger people, but I am actually I'm going to give you a bit of a trigger warning now that I am going to mention mental health. And right now we will be thinking about things like keeping our children alive. Those will be the things that we'll be thinking about all day long. But we're also then going to be worried about our career impact. What's going to happen? There's a cost of living crisis. I can't afford to lose my job. How am I going to keep this going? So the aim is to think about what kind of environment we can create in order to retain great staff and ensure that we have a high performing team, ensure that everybody contributes and meets our organizational objectives. I'm not here to say we have to do everything to make life all rosy for everybody. We can't. In fact, on this slide here, I say you do not need to fix everything. You can't fix all their problems, but you can signpost. You can signpost to support. You can help them find support. You can give them the time off that they need when they need it. We will get through this stuff. I'm here today talking to you because I have gotten through this stuff. I work hard to now help and support other people who are going through those processes. And there is a light at the end of a tunnel. Whilst I did have children who, for a number of years, were pretty much not wanting to be alive, I now have two incredibly happy young adults. Very happy, very successful in terms of where we are and what they're doing. And you can have that too. If you are a parent of neurodivergent children, it is possible. I know it is. I'm there. I also see and work with other parents who can also see that happening too. So my tips on here, listen without rushing to solve everybody's problems. You can't. You are not the fixer of everything. Reduce pressure where pressure is unnecessary. Be consistent so people know where they stand. You will have to look at guidance, policies, HR policies, but be a human being. Be kind. Communicate clearly and stay curious before making assumptions. I'll answer some questions in a moment. I've seen them out. All right. So I've got questions from you. And now you can either put this in the chat or I can go clever. I can go very clever, she says. And I'm going to bring up my poll again. So my poll will be there. And do you recognize anything from today's today's sessions? I can probably see the answers, but I can't see them on the screen because I haven't worked the technology out for that one. I will go and have a look in a moment, but you are more than welcome to pop your answers in the chat. The slides will be shared. Yes, we'll share the slides and you'll get them in a PDF, but you'll also get a copy to the recording also. Okay. So is there anything that you would do differently as a manager or even as a parent? What would you like to change and do differently after this session today? I really very much appreciate you being with us and being on this call. If you need to leave, it is now just gone 1 o'clock, so you are more than welcome to leave. However, I will be online for another 15 minutes. I'll keep the recording going for a moment, and then in a few moments, I'll stop the recording so that if anybody has questions and they don't want to be recorded, you can pop them in the chat and I'll try and answer them. Okay. So I've got one question here about has leaving school changed their improved their happiness? Right. What I didn't tell you is that my 20-year-old, nearly 20-year-old, she left school when she was 12. And so that was a big part of stepping towards a different life for her. So she had an EHCP and was educated at home with an EHCP through online learning through a company called Apricot Learning, who were just incredible, with plenty of therapies thrown in as well. And yes, her happiness improved, but it took years, not months, not days. It took a while, but she's super, super, super happy now. I'll pop a blog in the chat actually. Emily, are you able to pop a link to Owen's blog?
Of course.
Thank you. There is a big system challenge. A lot of what we're dealing with is around system change, and that's hard. We can't fix all the systems, but doing a session like this and now thinking about, okay, well, how else do we reach? How do we start this conversation? Where do we go? I'm a change manager, like an expert change manager. This is part of changing the system. We ain't going to do it overnight, but we can think about where we can pull those levers, where we can make change happen, all of those kind of things. James, I'm going to pick up on that one. I don't think there's anything we can change, just the whole process of getting help for our kids. Like CAMS, the school not being set up for neurodivergence, and we shouldn't have to fight like this. 100% agree. That wasn't James that said that. It was somebody else. I think James was responding. Totally agree. Absolutely agree. But I'm afraid the system is where it is. And we can look at what we can do, but what can we do to help leverage that change also? I'm just going to put some takeaways up on here. So I'll bring them all up so we don't have to wait for them. Got another comment on here. A manager may be open to this, but some organizations are not supportive of enabling it. Not yet. But we can start having those conversations and we can start talking about change. If anybody wants to know about my daughter's experiences at school and where she is now, she writes about it in a blog. So please do feel free. She's very, very happy to share, and she wants people to know that there is change and there are things that we can do and that you don't have to feel alone, and particularly helpful in sharing with those neurodivergent young people as well. So key takeaways: you don't always see what's going on. Managers will quite often see behavior and not always the load behind it. Support does not have to be perfect, and small adjustments can have massive impact. And psychological safety really can improve retention, by around the conversations that you have and how safe people feel about coming into work. I'm going to say thank you. And I'm really very, very, very appreciative of all the comments, all the engagement and everything on here. I will pick up on some of those in a moment. I will just finish and we've got any questions. If you can't answer a question today or ask a question today, or you're watching on the recording, do email us. Check out our website, get in touch, inquiries@inclusivechange.co.uk. Tell people about us. When I asked earlier about what one thing could you do differently, tell people about us. Tell people about what we do. And hopefully more people will say, hey, we want more of that. If you want to look at in your team or your organization, a very short 2-minute audit about culture and environment. We also have another one about recruitment and policies. This is a really quick way of going, okay, where are we? What are we doing? How is this working out for us? Okay, try our audit. You will get emails after this session with our video, with some links, and this will be one of the links. So if you want to try it, you can. All right. I'm just going to pick up on a few things that people have said in a second, but I am going to stop the recording now. So if you've been watching us on a recording, thank you very much. Goodbye, and hopefully we'll see you another time.